This is Freeze, and you're watching Thorin's YouTube, and I would have been better than forgiven if I wouldn't get injured.
Echo Fox, as an organisation, but particularly in the game League of Legends, are clueless. In fact, even calling them clueless is almost giving them a break. Like, I had an alternate title for this video. It was just too long to fit in the thread on YouTube. And it was going to be Echo Fox have less guile than the first Street Fighter, which is Straight Fire reference if you know what I'm referring to. Now, Echo Fox as an org, I would say generally, I would characterise them during their time in League of Legends as being almost universally loved, primarily due to beloved owner Rick Fox, who obviously the guy that the organisation is named after. His whole story of connecting with his son over games like League of Legends is obviously, yeah, it's quite a cool story. It's an inspiring story. And so with that background and the fact that he's defended esports publicly and shown even years ago that he thought it was a real thing and contrasted it positively with his own sporting career, where he was obviously an NBA champion with the Lakers 3 times. Even though they love this guy, people haven't generally really criticised his org in League of Legends that much. Or at least they've generally avoided criticism for quite a while, minus perhaps last year when they had the whole Phoenix incident where they basically fucked Phoenix over last minute by not giving him any time to sign with another team, but also because it was the trade deadline, just getting rid of him so he couldn't complete his residency. Kind of a bit shady. And I guess also if you go back far enough to, I think it was season 7, that was when there was, oh, it must be season 6, that was when there was the whole thing where no one would scrim them because Riot had sort of used Echo Fox as a pawn in their game with the big orgs to make everyone sign this agreement for the league, because they were saying, like, if you don't, then we'll let teams basically just kind of poach. And it was kind of intimated they gave the green light to Echo Fox to do that, and then other teams didn't like that, so no one would practice with Echo Fox, and that's why they were practicing like academy teams, etc. As Froggen told that story on Listen Local, I believe. It might even have been mentioned in my reflections with him. So the thing about this org is, this isn't like an org that comes in and they're starting from nowhere. They're just a little org trying to grind their way up. It's not an org that just has no history and nobody would want to play for them anyway. This is an org that has a big name guy who could have come. I've no doubt if you put Rick Fox in the room when you negotiate with a big free agent, if they're an NA player, hey, they might be impressed by that. That might be able to win them over, right? To get them to go with your team over a FlyQuest or a Clutch Gaming or someone akin to that, right? Golden Guardians. And you look at the fact that after the first few years, they have spent big money. I'm talking big time signings, Looper, Hooney. We're talking fucking huge names here. And what have they gotten for it, right? That's the big question, right? Because for my money, and for their money actually, they've got basically fuck all in the context of who they signed and what was possible. And a lot of that stems, quite frankly, from the org, from GM issues, from CEO issues. They've just been routinely below average, average at best, slightly above average briefly, and then they threw it all away. So before I set up the League of Legends side of this equation, the reason why I've always been very keenly observing this is because at the same time they had a League of Legends organization in 2016 when they bought Gravity's spot, they also had a CSGO team. And the CSGO team they had was even worse than the League of Legends one, even in context. Because I wrote an actual article about this, which I'll put in the description box below, where I described the team as objectively one of the worst Counter-Strike Global Offensive lineups ever assembled, dollar for dollar. There's the key context, dollar for dollar. And the point is, this was a team that had similarities to the early Echo Fox teams in League of Legends. It had one really great piece, just as they had Froggen. Hey, you can build a team around him, right? In the future, big name free agent, we can get people to come towards him, gradually build up the squad. Likewise, they had Sean Gers, one of the great in-game leaders in North American Counter-Strike history, someone who'd been semi-finals, playoffs of majors, or collectively over a number of times, been in big international finals, was actually coming off the previous year where he had that run of 3 big international finals with Cloud9. This is someone people want to play for. You then surrounded him with some alright pieces, some bad pieces, some not very good pieces, and it did nothing. Like, they only qualified the CSGO team for 2 top-tier events and finished last place at both of them. Absolutely embarrassed. They couldn't even do well when they went to a Tier 3 LAN called the ESEA Season 22 Global Challenge, even losing to no-namers. They were a terrible team. They had one great piece, they fucked up all the execution around it, made all the bad decisions, and they spent money in a wasteful manner. Completely incompetently general managed. Bad job by the organisation. So let's look at the League of Legends team, shall we? A team that despite playing they're now in their 7th split, they have only ever managed to make the playoffs twice. Of those 2 times they made the playoffs, they finished 3rd once, 4th the 2nd time, and failed to make Worlds through the gauntlet and never made Worlds as a result. So let's look at these lineups, how bad most of them are, and then the context of like, well, who could they have got? What could they have done here? Why was this a mistake to make this lineup? So here we go. I've got the lineups for you right here. Just resize this. So we'll start off with Season 6, 2016, the first year everyone probably remembers them. Now, obviously, they had a bunch of subs and they've tried people, so there might be other players in the system that I didn't include. These are generally the players they had, and then a sub, if the sub got any playing time, always like a meaningful addition. So in the first year they had their team, 2016, I get it for this one. You've already spent reportedly $1 million getting the LCS spot. You don't want to then spend another $1 million with the payroll. So what happens is you get Froggen, big name free agent, just had a terrible time over in Europe with Elements, wants to try it in NA as a North American girlfriend, wants the big salary, wants to perhaps move to North America long term, and therefore, you know, he's willing to accept. He's talked to Rick Fox. Rick Fox has given him the go-ahead that, like, you're going to be my guy, my franchise guy, as Rick Fox often said, my Kobe on this team, akin to Kobe on the Lakers that Rick Fox used to play for. I'm going to build around you. You're my star piece. Okay, that all makes sense. That's a good signing. If you're going to make use of your money and spend on a big name free agent, there's someone who's had a bad year, so you can get him where maybe he isn't getting offers from the Cloud9s of the world, but you can get him and he has the potential to go back up again. He's only had the one bad year. He's had many, many good years. He's a big name player. Lots of people like him who are other pros. Potentially you can attract free agents that way. If you spend a lot of money on him, very consistent player, fair enough. That's fine. I understand then why elsewhere in the lineup, initially, it's a budget roster. I don't blame this on this much. So, okay, let's look who else they have. They have top lane KF4. Jungle was a player called Hard, and then they had Grigney, aka Grig, who now plays for TSM, but doesn't because he's had his problems. Mid lane Froggen. AD carry Keith, aka Keith McBrief. LOD played there briefly, and then the support player was Big, who you may know from elsewhere in the LCS. So, okay, let's look at this team first of all. So, KF4, basically a nobody, didn't make it overall, had the odd good game. Hard, I mean, he was an okay jungler at times, I guess. Grigney showed a little bit of promise, but this was way too early on in his career. Froggen was actually pretty good. He was basically what you'd expect from Froggen. Lane well, play some off-meta champions, play some meta champions, be good in late-game team fights if the team can survive till there. AD carry, Keith actually did a decent job in this team. Obviously, I mean, he was the other known player, another player that you were kind of like, actually a pretty good player in terms of being worth the shot of where you're at. Like, he's willing to join a team like this. He's had experience on Team Liquid. He's had experience on TSM. Okay, this is a guy I'm willing to give a shot to. He was decent enough, actually. He wasn't terrible all the time. LOD was pretty bad, but probably should never have been in the LCS. Big as a player, I have to say, I thought was a bit underwhelming. I didn't think that bot lane overall ended up being good. But whatever, you look at this lineup, it's not a bad first iteration. Now, you could ask yourself, why not make some sort of a move to upgrade for the summer? But whatever. I'm sure they used that bullshit logic a lot of teams do. Like, oh, we were still growing and, you know, we've learned from the mistakes of the first split. We've got these subs, so let's see how it goes. Obviously, fuck all happened. But fair enough. The first year, I can give them a break because I know about the buyout and I know about where they were at as an org. Season 7, 2017, now it starts to get a bit more questionable, boys. Because let's open this motherfucker up. So, okay, Season 7... It's not really that much better a looking lineup, is it? Like, it is a better looking lineup, but it's not significantly better, right? So you've had your first year, you've paid Froggen well, he seems happy, he's not complaining, he's not leaving. Surely we can attract some big name free agents, right? Well, they went and signed a big name free agent. They spent a lot of money on this guy. They signed Looper. You remember Looper, right? Played, obviously, won Worlds on Samsung White. Has been in the playoffs of OGN champions, now LCK, a number of times. After that, he went to China. Now, if you don't remember his time in China, that's very key. Because when he was on Samsung White, people tried to hype him as like a really sick top laner. But he was on one of the most talented teams of all time. One of the best teams of all time. And quite frankly, his job wasn't to carry. His job was just chill out in the top lane, play whatever picks are available. You're going to get all your picks because we've got fucking Dandy and Mata and Pawn and Imp and people are taking the power picks away from them. You're going to get whatever's available. Just play it well. Try not to die much. Teleport when Mata tells you. One of the greatest shot callers of all time. A guy who in this lineup redefined how League of Legends was played for like the next 2 fucking years with how they split the map for vision and then attacked into the dark areas. Like, this is unbelievable. So you get then... They have that guy. If he was coming off Samsung White, I'd almost understand the signing. But when he went to China, he was on two notable teams. He was on the team called M3, where he joined with Dade, who was on the other Samsung team, Samsung Blue at the time, who'd obviously won OGN that year, right? This was a terrible team. They never did anything meaningful. Dade was actually terrible generally after the first split. Lupa himself looked lost. He really did look like my old joke of like he was just Mata's third summoning spell. Mata just had a teleport summoning spell that he pressed and it made Lupa come to the bot lane so they could have a team fight. No, not really, or a skirmish. What really happened was Mata obviously commed very well and then Lupa just had to press the button. Magically when Mata wasn't there, you didn't see those sick teleports. It wasn't there and he wasn't a particularly strong individual player in the LPL. That's despite the fact many players who didn't even make it in Korea, Flawless, Clid, who else have we got? I mean, it's plenty of players overall. Mystic. These guys are Koreans. They made their names in the LPL as strong individual players. This guy did fuck all. Now, what probably got him picked up is after that, when he went to play 2016 with Royal Never Give Up. And this is when he was back with his mate Mata. This was actually before they had Uzi. I remember they were the team that made top 4 at that MSI and had actually won the most best of ones in the group stage. But then they got drawn against SK Telecom because SK Telecom was ranked 4th. And it's kind of a bullshit playoff seeding in that sense. Like SK Telecom was obviously the best team overall there by the end. So people might remember him then and go, oh, he was a pretty competent player back then, right? And so that's probably why he was signed for Megabox in Season 7. The problem is, his only good times when he plays with fucking Mata. Like, this guy actually is not that good a player. So what was he like in the LCS? He was okay. I guess he was okay, but if you know how much they spent for him, he was terrible. It was one of the worst signings in the LCS in many, many years. And as I've alluded to, he's not someone who showed very good ability to come outside of Korean. And without Mata, what's even the point in having him in this team? He's not going to carry the top lane, so you haven't got 6 solo laners. Because you've spent big on him, you haven't got a lot of money for the other roles. So you've got Lupa, overvalued player. You've got Jungle Acadian. Okay, I'm fine with giving him a try. He actually ended up being pretty decent early on. Yes, he fell off hard after that. Griggs, obviously not a bad person to try either. We still don't quite know whether he's going to make it or not. People might say the jury's out. I personally think he's kind of shown all he's got. And I don't think he's going to get much higher. But whatever. That's how it is. Obviously, both of them actually... I mean, just pure coincidence, but they're actually both on TSM now, aren't they? So bizarre that actually TSM apparently looks like back at this Echo Fox lineup and goes, fucking hell, those junglers were good. So apparently they disagree with this video, but then again, they disagree with a lot of things about making good lineups, as you've seen over the last 2 years. Mid lane still Froggen, still a very competent player, perhaps not quite as good as Season 6, because I'd say the mid lane talent generally had gotten a bit better in Season 7. AD carry, we've still got Keith, but then you bring over Mash and Gate, who'd been on, I can't even remember what fucking team right now. What team would it have been? Would be the team that was like formerly TIP and shit like that, I assume. So I can't even remember what fucking team that was called in Season 6. Who gives a fuck, right? There you go. There's the answer. So they managed to get in, still have Keith. I'd rather upgrade the AD carry if we're getting fucking Lupa, but fair enough. Mashme, I mean, he's played a long fucking time, but he's an alright player. Gate's not been bad as a support player. I can see why people don't mind him being the LCS, but if this team was supposed to really contend or be like potentially top 4, top 5, then this wasn't the right player to sign. Like, you don't have a strong bot lane again. You don't have strong jungler, although at least you're gambling on someone. I didn't mind the gamble. You've messed up the top lane, and Froggen also... He's not going to like brute force 1v9 most of the games. Like he can 1v9, but it's in a more subtle fashion, isn't it? It's from getting lane advantage then going to team fights to the survival lane. He's not going to play assassins and just get 4 kills in lane. So this lineup again makes no fucking sense. And again, they accomplished basically nothing, right? The problem is this was a lineup you could have done things differently. It's not like Season 6. Now you've had to time. Now you don't have the $1 million in the off season you spend it for a spot. Now if you spend correctly, you can get quality players. Like if you're willing to break the bank to get Lupa, why wasn't this Someday? Someday went to Dignitas, right? Why not sign Someday to this squad? Someday and Froggen would be a fucking amazing solo lane setup. Now you're really cooking with gas. What about the jungle spot? Okay, I didn't mind them gambling on Acadian. He actually showed some promise early. But look who else you could have signed. You could have signed Moon, a guy who was kind of on the downs at that point in time. I've always thought he's a pretty competent player. Maybe he has some sort of psychological block in the LCS stage. I would have gambled on him in Season 7 though. Then you have DOhDoubleG. We know DOhDoubleG eventually went to Immortals. Troubled player, right? What you do is you go to No Winston and say, I'll sign him to Echo Fox. Yeah, I'll give you a nice signing. Like, let him go to my team, mate. Oh, this is before Immortals. So I'd go to Team Liquid and say that. Team Liquid's going to do it because they're not going to think Echo Fox is actually going to be a contender. Immortals actually ended up being a contender eventually. I think you could have got Someday. Imagine that lineup. I think you could have got DOhDoubleG. Imagine that lineup. You could have had Meteos. This is when Meteos was just fucking around as like the sub for P1. Meteos is a player who, if he wants to play and is motivated, is never going to be bad. So you put a self-directed, intelligent jungler like that, with players like Someday, self-sufficient, Froggen, self-sufficient, but players who can carry out a lane if they want to, or they can play without having to carry and just play well in the gate. What could this guy have fucking done if you'd have had Meteos or Dardoch on this team? What a beast top half of the map. Then you look at elsewhere, okay, AD carry. I think for summer, where they fucked up here is I would have gone hard after Wild Turtle. Remember, he ended up going to FlyQuest. But was it FlyQuest he went to? I think it was, right? Because if you remember, he'd been on TSM for the spring split when Doublelift obviously wasn't there. Then they went to a Doublelift as the starter. Again, you go to TSM and he said, don't give him a FlyQuest. Give it to us. We're not even a content. And you get him. Then all of a sudden, you've got a pretty decent bot lane, right? In terms of gate, fair enough. I mean, there were other options you could have gone with there. If you want like more of an out there one. Do you remember when Bonnie Fufu kept playing for Cloud9 and then they kept trying to decide between, should we go high or him or should we go with Smoothie or him? And they obviously kept going against him because he didn't end up ultimately working out for an elite team in the LCS. Why not go for someone like that? That's a player like Moon that you take a gamble on. They could end up being big time and they're not going to cost as much money now. Now, maybe he decided to become a streamer, I don't know. But this would have been a nice offer and a potentially tantalising lineup to come and join. So, okay, Season 7 you fucked up. You probably already know if you watch the last few years of League of Legends that Season 8 gets a lot better, right? Season 8 is a more big time. Similar kind of setup, but much better choices. So, okay, let's have a look here. So we've got top lane Huni. I mean, let's not fuck around here. There's one thing I need to mention before I mention this roster, isn't it? Mid lane isn't Froggen. Now, Froggen's a guy you've called your franchise player. They even intimated to Froggen that he'd probably be signed again. That's why Froggen didn't go elsewhere and sign with another team or even a European team. That's why Froggen ended up taking a year off because they fucked up the contracts. You notice how even just getting contracts or communicating with their players is a problem for Echo Fox as an organisation. They're having issues with this. So I think them not signing Froggen actually is the killer of this roster, but we'll get to that in a minute. So they sign Huni top lane. Just like Lupa, it's a big time gamble. You're breaking the fucking bank. He's just come back from SK Telecom, where he won LCK, where he won MSI, where he went to the final of Worlds. Yes, he had his problems in the latter half of the year. Yes, he was very one-dimensional, even on SK Telecom by the end. And it's a big, big gamble, right? But you've seen how good he's been in LCS. It's a gamble that would make sense. The problem is this. When you look at the rest of the lineup, I don't think it makes that much sense. Because when you look at this lineup here, Phoenix is a good laner and can be a good team fighter, but he's not got great comms with the non-Korean players, and he's not going to be an amazing carry. So this is basically another, let's run everything through the top lane through Huni team. You've got a solid bot lane who actually was starting to die off at this point in time after their Dignitas time. And so really, mad pressure on Huni and Dardoch to carry this particular game, right? And Dardoch and Phoenix aren't exactly best fucking buds, are they? So it's not that great a lineup overall. This is the problem. The Huni gamble makes way more sense if you get Froggen as the mid laner. Because, first of all, one less import slot. Secondly, you've got a player who's just as good as Phoenix, but better, has better comms, better experience, can actually shot call to some degree, which Phoenix fucking cannot. You have Demonte there to learn from Froggen behind him. Phoenix isn't going to fucking teach that guy anything. You have Dardoch to gank the two solo lanes. You'd have very strong solo lanes at this point in the LCS. If you go look at the Season 8 lineups, bot lane would still be half decent. Eventually, you would have gotten Lost in anyway and tried him out. Obviously, if you'd had Lost and Smoothie and you have Froggen and Huni, now you've got a fucking good lineup. Now you've got a team that could actually do something. Now, they did do something anyway. Obviously, they finished third in the spring split and they finished fourth in the summer split. But this lineup could have potentially contended. This lineup could have potentially, I'm just going to go ahead and say it. I think if they had Froggen, if they had... yeah, if they had players like that, I think they could potentially have been in the final. They might even have won the LCS. Remember, the first split, Team Liquid came in with a wax seed and had to go from the first round to the finals. In the summer, you had a team like 100 Thieves in the fucking semi-finals who actually, yeah, they could win games, but they were kind of bums by that point in time. Competition wasn't that crazy in Season 8, guys. That was after franchising when all the lineups got messed up. So let's look who else they could have gotten. Huni, big gamble, probably the wrong mid laner. Dardoch, great signing. Thought that was fantastic. Phoenix... okay, that's all right, I guess, except if you know they could have had Froggen. Demonte, well, I mean, now we know he's not a bad backup, could end up being a decent player. Altec at this point in time is kind of a whack signing after how it ended up with Dignitas. I still think he's someone who could potentially be revitalised, could turn his career around. The problem is, to redeem a player like Altec, I think you need a very good coach who can bring out more confidence in him. Like the way he plays even in the game, I always thought he had a very poor mentality. But Give Froggen as a mid laner. Again, maybe that can work as well. Someone who can shot call around. Then Adrian and Smoothie. Right, Adrian's a whack sign. I've always thought he's a very overrated player ever since TIP. Obviously, he has champion pool issues the whole time. Smoothie's an awesome player. If you'd have actually had the right players in this team, maybe you could have held on to Smoothie going into Season 9. So then you come to Season 9 lineup. Let's see what the fuck has happened with this lineup. Because I'll go ahead and tell you right now, guys, this is the worst of them all. In the context of who they are and what possibilities they had. Season 9 lineup. They have Solo as a top laner. You might remember from Clutch Gaming the year before. They have Apollo and Hakuo, ADC and support, also from Clutch Gaming. They have the jungler, Rush, who's coming back from KT Rolster in Korea, where he was a sob. He even went to Worlds. Obviously, he hasn't had that much playing time. He's mainly been a streamer, but he used to be a great player. He once won an MVP as a jungler on tip. Then you have mid lane. We've got old Phoenix back again. He's still there. He's the one remaining player. Now, the problem with this lineup is like this. Why have you signed Solo? I didn't think he showed that much promise on Clutch Gaming. I think he's been shit on Echo Fox. I don't know why this player's being signed. Remember, there are other players out there, big name players, depending on who else he signed, that were available. We know Flame was available. He actually would have ended up just sitting out if Damwon hadn't signed him over in Korea, because CLG didn't want to sign him. FlyQuest, I think he decided not to sign with. You could have had Flame at this particular position. Obviously, then couldn't have both Rush and Phoenix. In terms of Rush, you gave up Dardoch for Rush. You could have signed Meteos, and you chose Rush. Now listen, I might have made this mistake myself. I thought Rush was an incredible jungler when he was in the LCS. I even thought he showed some signs when he was on Olaf early game, when he was in KT Rolster. I'd probably gamble here myself, except with the fact that he's a foreigner, so you're having to use an import slot. If you tell me I've got Dardoch and Meteos and they're not going to take an import slot, I'd sign Dardoch and Meteos all day. So I don't mind that as much at the time. Obviously now it's turned out to be terrible. Rush has been so bad, he's not even in the lineup. They replaced him with a guy I've never heard of called Panda, who's actually probably playing as good or better than Rush was. So that ended up being whack as fuck. And you could have had Flame top lane, as I said, if you're willing to spend big money. So you're willing to spend big money on Looper and Hooney, but not Flame. A guy who's never been bad practically any time in his fucking career, basically. Especially at the LCS level. Then your mid lane player, Phoenix. I just don't get it. Right? I don't know why you re-signed this guy. I mean, I assume the GM just goes, well, he was decent enough. It's like, where's the carry threats in this fucking team? Like, this could have been Pobelter. What a great team that already is, which also would allow you to sign a player like Flame top lane or a star player for your AD carry if you wanted. Could have been Piglet down there. So why Phoenix? What does he bring? Like, in this team, he's basically the only, like, true carry threat. Apollo's going to be a threat in team fights, but he's going to just play safe till he gets there. And as a carry threat, a solo carry threat, what a terrible player to have. Someone who can't comp properly, can't shot call, plays very greedy around just laning. Come on, homie. And then the bot lane, you know what, that's a decent signing. They've always been a decent bot lane. I do think they get overrated because they tend to be in bad teams. People go, well, they're pretty good. It's like they're average. They're just average. If you have a sick mid lane and a top laner, they're the type of bot lane you'd want. If you don't, just like the CLG bot lane, I don't want that to be my main fucking carry lane. It's not going to get shit done. So you look at Apollo, decent signing. Obviously not in the context of the solo laners. Yeah, Hakuo, decent signing. Yeah, not really that much. I mean, I guess I think he's the better of the two personally, but that's just a side thing we won't go into in this video. So, okay, you look into the history of Echo Fox. One of the guys they signed early on as their CEO was a person called Jace Hall. He's actually someone who apparently has like worked in like Hollywood with movies, production and stuff. I assume that it's just an assumption that's maybe where Rick Fox knows him, or those credentials mean something to Rick Fox. But during this guy's tenure was when the WAC CSGO lineup came and the first WAC League of Legends won. He also, after leaving Echo Fox, went and was the co-chairman of the H1Z1 League, which more recently had all these scandals about them like not paying out or some shit allegedly. So apparently success hasn't really followed him around, incompetence has. Then you go and look at the coaching stuff. You're spending big money, get a good fucking coach. No, they went for Peter Zhang, who was the guy who was the coach of LMQ, Chinese team, just as he is Chinese, team fighting team, bloodthirsty team. That made sense. Then you give him the Beast Team Liquid lineup that finished third a bunch of times but didn't make it to Worlds and probably could have won LCS. So I thought he fucked that up. I thought they did the right thing to fire him. After that, wasn't a particularly competent coach elsewhere. Obviously here did fuck all, right? Then they had Inero. I think Inero's done a decent enough job. I like the cut of his jib when I hear him in interviews. Hasn't had many good teams. He's now obviously Froggen's coach again in Golden Guardians, which is like an okay team. They're actually at the moment ended up being better than most of the Echo Fox times, but that's just a happenstance, right? You couldn't have known that going in. Seems like he's done a decent job. He's not a superstar coach. Obviously, the current coach they've had is Song, the guy who was good in Immortals, but who knows how much of that was him. Was terrible in TSM when he had a very good set of players generally. Didn't manage to make use of them. I don't really know why you'd spend big money getting Song at this point in time. Again, why not sign a big name European coach? Why not sign some talent from Korea that actually comes in with more track record? Song didn't really have that great a track record in Korea all in all. One of the worst things about Echo Fox, which shows how clueless they are, is they're left with fucking nothing. Like, they don't even have a CSGO team anymore. They're the worst team in the LCS as of right now. As of the end of, I think it's like week 7, I think they're the worst. Even when they were tied with like Clutch and 100 Thieves, and I think maybe even Optic, when all those teams were bottom of the LCS, I still thought Echo Fox was the worst team. Because 100 Thieves at least have a couple of players who could potentially carry the game. Optic actually has Crown, etc. 100, who else? Who else was down? Clutch actually has some... Piglet's a fucking decent player. Hooney in theory could be a decent player. They have some alright pieces. What kills me is Echo Fox has almost nothing. They have no real carry threats in the true sense of the LCS. They don't have a very well-made lineup. They don't have cohesion. They're not good at anything. They're not like a really good team-fighting team, or at least a really good laning team, or good skirmishing team, or good vision control, or they work well with the jungler, or good solo laners, or like a really strong bot. They don't have fucking anything in this team. They're good at nothing. And yet they had money. They are literally, in my opinion, the most unlikely team in the LCS to win any games. That's not just because they're currently last. I mean in all context when you look there. Then you look at the context of the org. So they spent tons of money on big name Korean players. Lupa, Hooney, Phoenix. Where are all the EU players aside from Froggen? Why don't you go and get some cheap fucking EU talent who could be in like the 5th to 6th best European team? You bring him up, bring over fucking Vizzy Chachi or something. He'll be a monster if you put him in the LCS. Why are you wasting fucking money on Lupa and then reruns of Hooney and Phoenix over and over again? Even if you're not going to go with Froggen, go with one of those EU mids, get fucking Nemesis or Humanoid. Why are these moves never considered? Why do you have to be Korean but washed up or not that good to sign for Echo Fox? Then you look at the talent they have had. Hooney, Froggen, Dardoch. They haven't kept any of the fucking talent. They've retained 0 talent from the teams that they had in the past. They can't even hold on to players. You could literally, over the entire history of the Echo Fox org, make an all-star team that would be like top lane, Hooney or Lupa, depending on what area you want to say. I'd say Hooney. Jungle, Dardoch. Mid lane, Froggen. AD carry, Apollo. Support, Smoothie. Are you shitting me? You could have had Hooney, Dardoch, Froggen, Apollo and Smoothie in one team. That team's going to win the fucking LCS, mate, or make the finals. Last year, you had your best ever result, 3rd. Now you're not even probably going to make 3rd. Well, you're definitely not this split. Probably never going to make 3rd again at the rate. So don't even keep hold of talent. They've had mediocre and average players most of the time, and then they've kept some of them for too long. They've traded, or more importantly, they've killed the rep that they had from Season 3 and having players like Froggen. They've killed the trade value of having big name players who'd want to join what was one of the top teams after Season 8. What has this team done well? This video was supported by Dean Tanglis, Andreas, Snazore Westerlund, James Harding, NateDOhDoubleG, OllieJ, Tobias Bernasconi, Travis Greb, Tristan Jones, Daniel Olivar, Jiangheng Lu, and special thanks, as always, goes out to Jerky's Minion, one of my OGs. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to ask me a question. I have a monthly AMA. Perhaps you want teasers for who the next guests are on my upcoming talk shows. Maybe you want to be part of my monthly discussion where my top patrons talk to me. Well, put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the description box link for Patreon.